Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 7 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 13, Scrap Heap, Part 2. In conclusion, the ancient Greek myths of gods, monsters and heroes continue to influence modern hero culture, even to this day. And they will no doubt continue to inspire up-and-coming heroes for many generations to come. Mina concluded before giving a light sigh. She had done it. She had composed and edited an essay within the span of 3 days, researching the hell out of her subject and making sure that the information was presentable. She had even made sure to include a source page for good measure. All that was left was the approval of her audience. So, what do you think? Momo and Bulkhead stood in front of her in her family's garage, having listened to the essay front to back in order to judge it. Well, in Bulkhead's case, he was technically sitting in vehicle mode while his holoform stood, but regardless, the two were Mina's last hurdle before she felt confident enough to present her essay to midnight the following day. Momo rubbed her chin, a light smile appearing on her face. That was very good. Really? Mina cheered. You really think so? Yeah, Mina, that was an awesome presentation. Bulkhead approved. And going off of it, it's a pretty well put together essay, too. He gave her a thumbs up. I think you'll ace that report. Mina's shoulder slumped over and she sighed again, heavier this time. I hope so. I feel like I've worked myself to the bone over this one weekend. She lifted her stack of papers up with a grin of her own. But knowing that I've put together this whole thing in just 3 days, it was worth it. And I hope you got a little lesson out of this, too. Momo added with a raised brow. Don't shirk your schoolwork and put something off until the last minute. She placed a hand to her chest. Like I said before, if you ever have a problem with something, come and see me. The pink girl didn't even hesitate to give her friend a hug. You're the best, Yao Momo. I can't thank you enough for your help. Momo beamed in delight at her words. Oh, it was nothing, really. The fact that I got to help a friend with their studies is reward enough. Plus, it was on a subject that I find great interest in, so that was a bonus as well. Bulkhead gave a nod and nudged his thumb over his shoulder. Glad to see you guys reached your goal. Now, I think we're due back at base for afternoon training. I'll call up Red Alert and get us a ground bridge set up. Isn't it raining over in Musudafu, though? Mina asked. What kind of training can we do in that weather? Not much outside. Momo raised a finger, bringing up another point. But you forget, the base does have a dedicated training room, so perhaps we can get around to doing some combat practice. Honk honk. Just before Bulkhead could contact the base, the trio's heads perked up at the sound of 2 car horns coming from the front of the house, piquing their curiosity. Bulkhead glanced down to Mina, tilting his head. Expecting visitors. But Mina shook her head. Nope, my parents are out of town for the day, remember? The pink-haired girl went over and opened the garage door, allowing Bulkhead to back out into the driveway. The girls followed him and the moment they stepped out, they were greeted with a sight they'd never forget. Standing before them were 2 young adult men, tall, lean and muscular with faces that heavily resembled one another. Both of them had blue eyes, but aside from their facial features, they couldn't be any more different. The guy on the left wore a red muscle shirt and a pair of ripped, black jeans, though his most prominent feature was his jet black hair, styled into a foxhawk, with sideburns running down his jawline. As for the boy on the right, he had a more presentable outfit in the form of a long-sleeved yellow dress shirt and blue jeans, though his hair was just as noticeable. It was also black, but it was long enough to reach his shoulders, and he had yellow lightning bolt patterns in it. And what's more, he also had a goatee to match. If they didn't know any better, the girls would have sworn they were looking at some sort of bizarro versions of Kirishima and Kaminari that had joined a street gang, if it weren't for the red and yellow Lamborghinis behind them. But, if anything, the fact that it was Sideswipe and Sunstriker's holoforms made it all the more bizarre. Sideswipe's holoform smirked and slicked his hair back, though his sprung right back forward. Hello, ladies. Surprised to see us. Sunstreaker said as he pointed at them, winked, and then clicked his tongue with a smile of his own. Don't lie, you definitely are. I can tell by just how speechless you. Biwahahaha. Mina suddenly burst out into uncontrollable laughter as she doubled over and fell right onto her back, rolling on the ground laughing while Momo was only just able to keep it together. The rich girl kept her mouth covered, but her giggles were still able to be heard, her body trembling despite her resistance. But Mina was not able to keep the same composure. Ahahaha. Wah, what the heck are you guys doing? You copied Kirishima and Kaminari's hair. Momo managed to mutter. The twins glanced to one another before putting their confident smiles back on. Well, sure, Sideswipe answered. After all, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Ha ha ha. But you made it worse. Through tears of hilarity, Mina pointed to Sideswipe's cheeks and Sunstreaker's chin. Those sideburns and the goatee. Don't you know how tacky those are? As Mina's laughter went on, the twins couldn't help but be taken aback by her open ridicule of their appearances. Hey, come on. Sideswipe brushed his hands through the hair going down his jawline. I think these look cool. They were great in the pictures I saw. Sunstreaker stroked his short patch of chin hair. Yeah, and besides, I've already got one of these in my robot mode, so I had to add it in. Momo tuned in some soothing breaths as she began to gain her composure, her giggles being reduced to a mere chuckle. Ahem, well, I suppose I can't fault you for that, Sunstreaker. She smiled awkwardly at the duo while Mina tried to regain her own breath on the driveway. I sincerely apologize for our outburst, but we were certainly not prepared for, well, you. You're certainly allowed to appear however you like in your holoforms, just make sure you give the others a bit of forewarning before you show them. Yeah, otherwise they'll all probably end up like Mina. Bulkhead smirked as he crouched down, seeing the pink yet red-faced girl finally taking in some much-needed breaths. You gonna be okay there, Mina? Why yes, haha, I think so. Mina wheezed before she got up to her feet, locking her eyes onto the clearly upset Lambo twins. Guys, listen, I get what you're going for is what a lot of humans would say is cool, but even you have to admit, it's a bit over the top. Maybe. Sideswipe shrugged. But we're still sticking to it, right, Sunny? Sure are. Sunstreaker grinned confidently. And no one's going to change our minds. Now, with all that out of the way, how about we take the express way back to base, huh? Bulkhead nodded to the younger bot. Right, I was just about to contact the bots back home before you showed up, actually. The burly holoform man glanced back to his Hummer pickup mode as he activated his comlink. Bulkhead to base, we're ready to be received for afternoon training. Mind bridging us in. After he said that, though, his audio receptors were filled with something unexpected, a whirring feedback sound followed by static. Gah. What the, that's weird. Sideswipe and Sunstreaker heard the noise too and decided to activate their own comms, only to get the same result. Super weird. The red bot agreed. It's like the basie's comms are all down. Sunstreaker glanced between his teammates suspiciously. Weird, because they were working fine this morning. What do you think happened? Momo piped up. Some sort of communication error. Well, maybe. Bulkhead folded his arms in thought. Kinda weird that it happened so suddenly, though. Here, let me try something else. The Autobot bruiser changed the frequency on his comm, going directly for one of his teammates. Bulkhead to red alert, come in, red. Everything all right? Thankfully, he did get a reply, though not one he was expecting. Bulkhead. Scrap. I forgot all of you were still out there. This situation just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? Whoa, Doc, pull back on the throttle a bit. Sideswipe interjected, with him and Sunstreaker phoning themselves in. What's got you all wound up like a high-tension spring? Well, I suppose it's only right that you know about the situation. Red Alert sighed. I'm sure you recall the frozen pod that you and Jazz retrieved early this morning, correct? Well, it thawed out, and it wasn't what any of us were expecting. I'm afraid that what you two brought back was a scraplet trap. And just like that, the three bots' holoforms all widened their eyes simultaneously, with panicked expressions overtaking their features. Scraplets. The trio echoed before Bulkhead lowered his head, his holoform visibly trembling. No. You've gotta be kidding me. Mina and Momo eyed one another curiously before the pink-haired girl raised a hand. Excuse me, but, what's a scraplet? A paint job nightmare is what they are. Sunstreaker exclaimed, rushing up to the two girls and getting right into their faces. The ladies gasped and doubled back as Sunstreaker kept laying on the panic mode. They're tiny little metal mites that have a voracious appetite for all things metal. Especially living metal. They can kill a bot within seconds. Sideswipe went on, his tone surprisingly serious. Trust me, I've seen it happen, and so has Bulkhead. The two girls were silent for a few seconds, stunned by what they had just heard. Whoa, so they're kinda like piranhas for Cybertronians. Mina concluded. Only much more vicious by the sounds of it. Momo folded her arms over her chest nervously. Does sounds like anything I'd want to come into contact with. Sideswipe went back to Red Alert on the comms. Red, please tell me that they aren't the reason why the comms are down. Alright, I won't tell you that. Red Alert complied. But I will say that they're the reason the ground bridge is down and why Optimus and Windblade are currently trapped at the North Pole. What? The whole group exclaimed. Windblade is stuck at the North Pole with Optimus. Momo's hands went to her hair in disbelief. That's terrible. We need to get them back before they freeze. Bulkhead took a deep breath and collected himself, furrowing his brow as he took control of the situation. Alright, no time to be scared of some scraplets, we need to get the boss bot back. We're returning to base right now. Wait, no, don't come back. Red Alert ordered firmly. There's already 5 bots in the base. If any more enter, then that could just agitate the scraplets even more into a feeding frenzy. May and I need time to repair the ground bridge so that Optimus and Windblade have a chance at getting home. But we can't just sit by. Sideswipe urged. Those things could still have you for lunch. You may not even get to fix the ground bridge. We already have Jazz, RC, Bumblebee, Strongarm and the other humans combing the base to seek and destroy as many as possible, Sideswipe. Red Alert pointed out. Hopefully they'll be able to take out at least a solid chunk of the swarm. But, if worse should come to worse, it probably would be handy to have you 3 at least on standby. Sunstreaker wasn't exactly happy to hear that. Ah, really? Do we have 2? His holoform zipped over and hugged his own vehicle form, rubbing his hand against his hood. Won't somebody think of my beautiful paint? Smack. Ouch. Mina drew her hand back and pulled Sunstreaker up, shaking him by the shoulders. Pull yourself together, Sunstreaker. She stopped and pulled him up so that she was staring directly into his eyes. At this point, your paint can stand a few scratches if it means saving all of our friends from certain doom. Now pull your self-obsessed head out of your butt and get your mind in the game. The group all stared at Mina, flabbergasted at just how passionate she was in wanting to save the others. Even Sunstreaker was so shocked that his lips were tight, clamped shut after hearing her demands. Okay. Wow, Mina's got away with words if she can get Sunny to shut up about his paint. Sideswipe smirked as he gave a nod. Alright, so it's settled, we're headed back to Coruscant and waiting a few clicks away from the base. If Red gives us a signal, we move in and help in whatever way we can. Indeed. Red approved over the comms. Hopefully it won't come to that, but if it does, well, we can only hope to see you soon. Red Alert, out. Once the call ended, Bulkhead pumped a fist and addressed the whole group. Alright, we know what our assignment is, Autobots, so let's get back there and, well, hope for the best. He approached his vehicle mode with Mina and Momo in tow, the 3 climbing in while Sideswipe and Sunstreaker pulled themselves onto the road. Now let's roll out. As the 3 revved up and drove away from Mina's house, though, Sunstreaker couldn't help but feel a twisting sensation in his internal workings. I'm gonna need a buffer after this. Alright, Iida, I give. Why do you want me on this squad? Tenya was taken aback by the suddenness of the question. It had only been a few minutes since they had parted ways with the rest of their team to go scraplet hunting, and in that time, things had been relatively quiet. Thankfully not too quiet as the situation would have you, but still fairly silent, with the footfalls of their Autobot companions being a somewhat reassuring noise. Still, as they lead the wary Jazz and Strongarm through the halls of the base, Tenya couldn't blame Kyoka for her question. I expected you to ask that sooner or later, he admitted. You're wondering why I didn't place you with Midoriya. Kyoka raised a brow at him. Yeah, kinda. It all just feels a bit intentional. And from that face you're making, I think that it is. And you'd be correct, Tenya affirmed. I wanted to have you with me so that you and I could discuss the bond that you and Midoriya share." This made Kyoka's eyebrows shoot up in surprise. And already, I see I made the right choice. At that question alone, Midoriya probably would have become a bundle of nerves. The punk rocker cleared her throat as her cheeks heated up a little. Well, I guess I can't argue that. His confidence is getting better, but if you had led with that off the bat, I couldn't be responsible for the ramble he'd go on. The two chuckled knowingly as Tenya went on. Yes, I'm sure. I hold a great deal of respect for Midoriya, though even I will say that he mumbles on a bit too much. He took on a slightly more serious face, though he kept his smile about him. But let's focus on the topic I wished to discuss. You and Midoriya. You have quite the special relationship, I can tell. Tenya saw Kyoka's cheeks brighten up again, and he knew that his assumption must be true. You both encourage one another, and in turn, I can see that the two of you make each other very happy. At that point, Kyoka's face was entirely red and she began waving her arms in denial. Aida, before you go off the deep end here, it's really not what you think. Yet, Tenya pointed out, well, Jiro, I myself am no expert on romance, but even I can see how much you both like one another. Tenya held up two fingers and brought them together. You are practically attached to the hip, am I wrong? Kyoka pursed her lips and sighed in defeat. Okay, fine, yes. I may or may not like Izuku a lot more than I'm letting on with him. She held up a firm hand to him. But I can assure you that I'm fine, Iida. Yaomomo's already helping me through it, somewhat. If I want to take things further with Izuku, I'll do it on our own terms. Immediately, Tenya nodded in understanding. Oh, I completely understand that, Jiro. Far be it from me to interfere with a naturally beautifully blossoming relationship. He received a groan from her at his choice of words, but he went on. However, should you both decide to eventually go out, I want you to keep in mind, you both are still UA students, so it's important to not let your feelings hinder your progress in school. As class rep, I felt like I should at least make that clear. And just like that, Kyoka deadpanned at the spectacled young man. Wow, really? Man, Iida, you really are devoted to our education. She shook her head at him and made her own argument. Anyway, I don't think you have anything to worry about with me and Izuku. He and I, well, we actually sort of share a goal with us becoming heroes. The girl tapped her jacks together sheepishly. So if anything, we shouldn't have any problems when it comes to getting through UA, okay? Well, that's good to hear. Tenya smiled in approval. So no matter what your relationship status is, you'll both have a common goal to work toward. Excellent. He gave her one last nod before focusing on the hallway ahead. I wish you luck, Jiro. Midoriya is a very kind-hearted soul. I know any young lady would be lucky to strike up a relationship with him, so I wouldn't wait too long to take your chance. HMPH, right, so you paired him up with Ochako knowing that, huh? Kyoka smirked back. Tenaida stopped abruptly and his eye twitched, all before he turned his head to the wall and knocked it against it. I may have made a grave miscalculation. Kyoka couldn't help but laugh at his little act of self-punishment before he pulled himself back to reality. But, no matter. With any luck, they'll be too focused on the mission to notice one another. Tenya, what are you talking about? Strongarm asked as she and Jazz came to a stop. And would ya try to keep yo, voice down? Jazz harshly whispered, the lieutenant holding on to a massive flashlight as he trembled in place. We don't wanna bring all the creepy crawlies our way, remember? Oh, yes, my apologies. Tenya bowed. I was simply talking to Jiro about a private matter. Strongarm sighed and raised her crossbow, furrowing her metal brow in concentration. Well, stay sharp. The scraplets could literally be anywhere. Now let's keep moving. The group nodded as they proceeded forward, all while Strongarm searched around diligently. Now, Denki found the first one around here, right? But then, shoom, IEE. The lights went out briefly, with nothing visible aside from the bots, optics and Kyoka and Tenya's silhouettes from the flashlight. The loud, high-pitched scream rang through the hallway before the lights flashed on again, but it came from the absolute last bot anyone would expect. Kyoka smirked and turned to Jazz. Dude, did you just scream like a little girl? What, me? Jazz smiled, trying to downplay the whole thing. Nah, no way. But the more everyone stared at him, the more embarrassed he felt. Well, I mean, maybe. Look, can we talk about this later? The two humans glanced to one another with small grins before Kyoka shrugged. Sure, whatever. The two continued forward, leaving Jazz to his own devices. Behind him though, Jazz could hear certain police bots snickering, causing him to turn around and give a pointed look to Strongarm. Watch that tone o' yours, cadet. Why yes sir, Lieutenant. Strongarm abruptly saluted. No more funny business. HMPH, that's what I thought. Taking a deep intake of air, Jazz pressed onward, with Strongarm covering his flank. As they went through the hall, however, he couldn't help but whip his head around every time he thought he heard something. Whether it was the pitter-patter of metal on metal, or the whirring of blades, it was almost too much for him. The thought that a swarm of scraplets could just come out of nowhere and devour him and Strongarm, it set him on a thin edge. Jazz, stay cool, okay. Kyoka encouraged. You're gonna be fine so long as we're protecting. Tink 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 tink. Pow pow. Pow pow pow. Without any warning, Jazz suddenly spun around and began shooting at the ceiling, forcing Strongarm to duck and cover while the kid stayed low to the ground. And then, unexpectedly, something actually fell from the ceiling overhead, completely overtaking Jazz. Ah, they got me. They got me. Kyoka and Tenya immediately brought up their makeshift pipe weapons, ready to throw down, only to see that Jazz was getting himself tangled in a bunch of cables. Well, that was embarrassing. Kyoka rolled her eyes before calling out to her friend. Jazz, get a hold of yourself, dude. It's just a bunch of cables. Jazz stopped and took a second glance at what was attacking him, and he instantly felt very silly. Oh, right. Cables. He reached for one and it fell from the ceiling, and from where it was, a huge deluge of scraplets came raining down on Jazz's head. Ah. Oh scrap. Strongarm raised her crossbow and began firing blasts of energy at the scraplets as they came scuttling toward her, but not even she could fend them off so easily. No. Get off of me. Get off. Strongarm. Tenya's eyes widened in horror as he watched his partner collapse, raising his own pipe as he started forward. Hang on, But then, he suddenly tripped, and he felt a sharp pain digging into the back of his calves. What the, The young man gasped as he glanced past his shoulder, only to see a dozen or so scraplets having jumped on him, their grinding metal teeth going right for his engines. Jiro. Kyoka whacked a bunch of scraplets away from Jazz before taking notice of Tenya's predicament, making her gasp in horror. Oh god, Iida. She made her way over to him with her pipe raised, only to notice that some scraplets were coming toward her as well. And she had a feeling she knew why. She eyed her earphone jacks and muttered, shit, before stuffing them into her jacket, hoping that they wouldn't try to reach them in there. This just gets better and better, doesn't it? Meanwhile, on the other side of the base, RC and Bumblebee were keeping their weapons raised, the two keeping an optic out for whatever scraplets decided to come their way. Stay frosty, B. RC heated. Remember, we're not alone in this. We've got backup. Bumblebee buzzed in agreement before both looked down to their two human partners, with RC asking, seen anything yet, guys? Only the odd piece of scrap laying around. Ochako answered, keeping her pipe weapon up and ready. Don't these things ever stop eating? Izuku kicked away another random piece of metal on the ground. This is just insane. RC nodded and set her optics ahead again. Trust me, I know. But this at least means we're getting close. Come on, let's exterminate these things. As they continued forward, however, Ochako couldn't help but feel a growing pit of nervousness seeping into her gut. She knew that she and Izuku wouldn't be targeted since they weren't made of metal, but Jazz's description of how scraplets actually ate a Cybertronian really struck a chord with her. She needed something to distract her, and that's when her sights went to Izuku. Maybe some casual conversation wouldn't hurt. She cleared her throat and spoke up. Ahem, hey, Midoriya. Izuku's head perked up and he set his sights to her. Yes. What's up, Uraraka? Should have guessed he'd be nervous to talk to me. The brunette sighed internally. After all, we haven't really had any big conversations outside of a few times. Still, she pressed onward, giving him a smile. I just wanted to officially thank you. F for what you did back during the entrance exams when you saved me. Oh. Izuku's eyes widened and he put a smile on, nodding to her. Why yes, of course, Uraraka. It was no problem, really. Your broken bones that day would beg to differ. Ochako pointed out. A small blush lined Izuku's cheeks at that. Yeah, good point. Ochako tilted her head, smiling at his rather bashful face. Listen, I know that you know about me offering to give you some of my points back then. This made Izuku's brain get back on track, focusing directly on her words. And I just wanna say, I meant everything that I said to present Mike. If it weren't for you, I don't know if I'd even be here right now. You guys, the Autobots, if I had gotten injured, or worse, I wouldn't have been able to experience it. Her own blush appeared on her cheeks as she twiddled her fingers. So, I guess this is really just a long-winded way of saying thank you, but you're welcome. The gravity user perked her head up, seeing Izuku smiling once again. And honestly, I should really thank you again for being so kind in offering to give up some of your points, even if we did both get in. He gave her a nod and raised a determined fist. Uraraka, you're going to make a great hero one day, I just know it. So let's give it our all and do our best with the spots we were given, sound good? Despite herself, Ochako could feel her blush intensifying. There was something about Izuku's determination that was rather infectious. She had to admit, she rather liked it. Her own smile came back and she gave a thumbs up. Why yeah, let's do our best. She trailed off as another thought occurred to her. And another thing. Yeah, what is it? It's just, I can't really explain this one as well. Ochako glanced to the side and scratched the back of her neck. You see, for some reason, it kind of feels a bit off to me calling you, Midoriya. And for the life of me, I have no idea why. It just feels weird. Izuku blinked a couple times at her statement, finding it a little odd as well. Well, I have been told that my last name's kind of a mouthful. He cracked a grin and made a suggestion. But if you want, I guess you could give me a nickname. Wow, you sure? The brunette was surprised at the offer, to say the least. Kyoka's pretty much the queen of that market. She has at least 5 for you, doesn't she? And probably more I haven't even heard yet. The two laughed in unison before Izuku went on. But really, so long as it's a nickname that she hasn't come up with, I think you can get away with it. Ochako hummed to herself, mulling it over for a moment before something occurred to her. Well, I don't know how well you'll handle this one, but I remember back during our first hero training course that you said that Deku would be the name of a hero, even though Bakugo kept calling you that to make fun of you. Izuku internally cringed remembering that moment. Looking back, it was a bit cheesy, but he meant every word, especially since it was Kyoka who helped him come to that conclusion. Why yeah, Kachan always used it to make fun of me, but Kyoka helped me realize that I could use it as my hero name to get back at him a little. Like using it as a clapback, you know. Oh yeah, I totally get it. Ochako nodded. So, my question is, why you want to call me Deku, right? The girl shifted her eyes away awkwardly, poking her fingers together. I mean, if it's alright with you, I don't want to make you uncomfortable or anything. I just think it'd be a neat name to call you. Izuku could tell that Ochako's nerves were getting to her about this, something that he was all too familiar with. So, while it would be a bit weird having this name used by both Bakugo and her, he saw no harm in it. Well then, Deku, it is. And just like that, Ochako's mood took a 180 and she was all smiles once again. Alright. Thanks, Deku. She took a moment to hear herself say the word itself, and immediately, it felt like something missing had just clicked into place. Haha. Yeah, now that feels a lot more natural. Glad to hear it. SSH. Kids, hush. RC ordered, bringing the duo's attention back to her and Bumblebee. The two bots were hugged up against the wall, staying as close to it as possible as they craned their heads around a corner. Izuku and Ochako joined them and peered around the corner as well, seeing that there was a huge ventilation tunnel down at the end of the short hallway. It was shaped like a tube and had a round grate over it, one that had clearly been eaten into. Recognize those bite marks? RC asked. Izuku furrowed his brow and brought up his crowbar. Yep, scraplets. What do we do, RC? B and I will take point. The The pink femme explained. You two be at the ready if they come out and swarm us. We're gonna need all the smashing you can muster. Right. Ochako brought up her wrench and held it firmly. Let's do this. ZRKT, exterminate. Exterminate. Bumblebee's radio chimed in, though a bit too loudly for anyone's taste. SSSHH. RC and the humans shushed. Bumblebee lowered his head apologetically, leading RC to give him a small pat. It's okay, B. Let's just be cautious here, okay. The yellow bot nodded up to her instantly and they started forward, with RC approaching the grate and reaching her hand out for it. She grasped the front of it tightly and waited a few seconds, before tearing it right off and aiming her pistol inside. Bumblebee followed suit as Izuku and Ochako raised their weapons, only to see nothing. What? I could have sworn we'd see at least some. Wait. Izuku raised his hand. Do you hear that? Tink 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 tink. The quartet felt a chill go through them as they slowly craned their heads around to a smaller ventilation grate in the ground down at the opposite end of the hall. The pitter-pattering of metal legs grew ever closer before finally, the grate shot right up and out came the scraplets, their teeth already whirring in anticipation as they drew toward the group. They tricked us. RC raised her pistol and began firing. We've been cornered. We gotta get outta. Ouch. Gah. Ah. Without wasting any time, the scraplets swarmed over RC almost entirely, the pink femme squirming on the ground as she tried to get them off. RC. Ochako started smacking the scraplets off of her while Bumblebee continued to fight, though it wasn't long until the scraplets began swarming him as well. B. Hang in there. Izuku hollered, doing his own part to fend off the swarm. Ow. Optimus, I really wish you were here right now. In the main control room, Eijiro and Denki kept up their guard as May and Red Alert repaired the ground bridge, though at this point, they were getting antsy. Even through the thick walls of the base, they could hear the screams of their allies, and while Red and May were able to ignore them and focus on their work, the boys weren't so lucky. Denki gulped and stepped closer to his friend. Bro, I think B might have been right. What, about the whole, game over, thing? Eijiro nudged Denki in the arm with a reassuring grin. Come on man, what kinda talk is that? I mean, sure, the sounds we've been hearing aren't the best, but the bots have backup. We have to have faith in our buds, ya know. He craned his head around and called out to the more intelligent duo. How's it going back there, guys? May pulled her head away and pulled up her goggles, her expression frustrated. In a word, not great. Red Alert grumbled and shook his head. We've repaired the damaged conductors, and rerouted the central conduits, but the ground bridge still won't receive power. He punched the floor in frustration, which cracked beneath his fist. Gah, man, wait a sec. Denki's face brightened up and he started charging up his hand. Maybe all the ground bridge needs is a little jumpstart. No. Red and May shouted in unison before the pink-haired inventor stormed up to him with a warning glare. Sparky, don't you dare try that. If you do that, you'll risk frying all of the circuitry all over again. Oh okay, I get ya. The blonde pulled his quirk back, though the moment he did, he heard a very familiar sound. Tink 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 tink. Oh no. Denki raised the pipe he had as a weapon while Eijiro activated his own quirk, the two boys high on their guard. They and May searched around for the source of the noise before bringing their sights up, and immediately, they saw a whole swarm of scraplets having gathered high up on the wall near a ventilation tunnel. The little monsters were scuttling about, keeping to themselves for the most part, until their sights were set on Red Alert. Within seconds, their mouths had opened and their saw blade-like teeth began spinning. Then all at once, they jumped off the wall, and began flying in midair. Whoa! Eijiro exclaimed, watching as the scraplets came dive-bombing down toward them. They fly. You never said they could fly. Red Alert spun around and gasped as the scraplets closed in on him, and the moment they made contact, they sent the medic sprawling onto the floor. He was almost instantly covered in trails of bite marks, his mesh being consumed by the tiny monsters. Og. Red Alert. May rushed over and picked up a stray hammer that was on the ground, using it to bash the scraplets off of him while Eijiro and Denki joined in. Their efforts seemed futile though as more scraplets kept coming, with dozens, if not hundreds more continued to hover overhead. But then, out of the corner of his visor, Red spotted something, and an idea popped into his head. May, the fire extinguisher. May spun around, spotted the bright red canister, and without hesitation rushed right toward it. She picked it up and went right to work spraying the cold, fire retardant spray onto the scraplets as the boys continued smashing them, and within seconds, the scraplets seemed to slow their pace to a complete stop, their eyes dimming and bodies freezing up before falling off red alert completely. Ha, wow, I can't believe that. Man down, man down. Kyoka's voice screaming through the room alerted everyone to the return of the two teams, and the moment they saw her and Izuku helping Tenya limp into the room, they gasped in horror. The young man was limping along, with his legs almost covered in blood. And to make it all the more shocking, he was bleeding from the engine holes in his calves, taking them completely aback. Oh God! Eijiro ran a hand through his hair. What the hell happened? Those little bastards tried to eat his engines. Kyoka barked. We need first aid. Izuku pressed. For everyone. Jazz came limping up, with the other Autobots all trailing behind him. Red, get the patch kit, we're all leaking like mad over, whoa. It was only then that the Autobots and humans all saw the massive swarm of scraplets overhead, and like a moth to a flame, the little pests opened their mouths up wide once again and went straight for them again. Bumblebee and Strongarm opened fired on the scraplets, but with there being so many more than when they were in the halls, they found themselves quickly overwhelmed. Ah, no. Strongarm wailed as the scraplets took her and beat down. Not. Ack. Again. That's it. I've had it. RC snarled as she ejected her swords from her back pieces, catching them as the energy blades sprung to life. Eat this you little glitches. The pink femme rushed forward and swiped her swords through the colony of scraplets, taking many of them down. However, many more clung onto her, making her double over as they munched her metal. Ah. No. I. Jazz screamed as he fell to the ground as well, a whole swath of scraplets ramming themselves into his chest. Not too far away, Red Alert was also covered in scraplets again, leaving only the children to fend off the swarm. It's official. Kyoka cried out while bashing more scraplets. Worst Sunday ever. Meanwhile, up in the far north, Optimus and Windblade were making their way through the heavy snowstorm, the strong winds and the blizzard itself making it difficult for them to move. Still, they persevered, hoping to all hope that they'd suddenly find a good signal to their headquarters. Optimus to base, do you read? Come in, Red Alert. Prime spoke over the storm, his heavy frame helping him along in his trek along the ice. However, the city speaker behind him didn't have that luxury. Oof. Optimus stopped and turned back, walking over to Windblade to help her up. You sure a nice drive or flight wouldn't help. She offered a smile as she brushed snow off of her armor plating. I hear there's this Earth city called Miami that's beautiful this time of year. The nearest temporal climate is too distant, Windblade. Optimus replied, shaking his head. Attempting to reach it would expend our energy, and hasten the freezing process. He directed his gaze toward the horizon, his mind going to what could be going on back at base. Until Red Alert sends for us, and he will, our best option would be to seek shelter and insulate ourselves. I think I saw a small alcove a couple clicks that direction while I was scouting. Windblade pointed eastward and Prime could make out the vague outline of what must have been a large hill. That's probably our best bet. Let's just hope Red picks us up in time. Several minutes had passed since the horde of scraplets had tried eating everyone, and needless to say, everyone was in rough shape. But thankfully, they were still alive, so that was a plus. The 5 Autobots and Tenya all propped themselves up against the ground bridge platform, groaning and moaning in pain as the kids finished off what was left of the tiny demons. They were practically bashing their heads in with pipes and tools as May sprayed the downed scraplets with the fire extinguisher, though by the looks of things, they were all quite dead. Did we get 'em all? The inventor asked. As if to answer her question, everyone began hearing the familiar mechanical whirring and metallic pitter-patter that they had heard throughout the day, and they could feel their guts all sink at the same time. Hardly. Red Alert sighed. These were just scouts. Next to him, Bumblebee let out an exasperated buzz, falling flat on his back. So that means, that the rest of them know we're in here. Strongarm muttered. And if we let them make us their next meal, Optimus and Windblade will never make it home. Red Alert asserted direly. We must get the ground bridge up and running. Right, but first things first. Kyoka and her fellow classmates all went over to their class rep, the spectacled boy laying flat on his stomach to try and slow the bleeding in his legs. Hey there, class rep, how are ya holding up? Denki knelt down in concern. You okay, man? Those things didn't actually eat your engines, did they? Tenya shook his head. Thankfully, they did not. Right then, he flexed his calves and his engines came popping right back out, though he instantly regretted that a second later. Mistakes were made. He winced as he pulled them back in. That was a bad mistake on my part. May pursed her lips and made her way over to a nearby storage unit on the wall, opening it up to reveal a first aid kit. Hold on there, Specs, we'll get you patched up. I can't believe they actually tried to eat through your skin to get to your engines. Izuku grimaced. That must have been awful. Scraplets will go through anything soft if it means getting to their preferred meal. RC jumped in, sneering in disgust. Unfortunately, Cybertron isn't the only planet that has scraplets, and if those little freaks see any organic beings as obstacles to their dinner, well, those teeth can go through more than just metal. Tenya winced as he sat up, allowing Eijiro and Mei to wrap bandages and gauze around his legs, yes, as I've learned. He craned his head up to Red Alert and raised a brow to him. So, once the ground bridge is operational, we'll be able to send the scraplets anywhere on the planet, correct? Yes, Red Alert affirmed. Do you have a suggestion? Eijiro suddenly raised his hand. Actually, I think it'd be a good idea to send him back to the Arctic. He jabbed a thumb toward the fire extinguisher that Mei used. I mean, we all saw that they don't like the cold. Awesome. Ochako cheered. Sounds like one-stop shopping to me. Red Alert had to admit, that was a sound plan. Given the sub-zero temperatures and the body mass of the scraplets, sending them back directly to the Arctic should freeze them on contact. He lowered his head and put a hand to his chin in thought. So think, Red, think. If the ground bridge is still down, and just like that, the realization dawned on him. Then there must be a breach in the Energon fuel line. Bumblebee suddenly buzzed again as he tried to get back up, only for his efforts to be completely futile. Jazz sighed and spoke up. Well, if we weren't breaching, one of us could head on over there and fix the dang thing. I think I can. Ow. Strongarm tried standing, but she ultimately slipped, her knees too weak to hold her own body up. Strongarm, I wouldn't try that again. Tenya advised. In fact, all of you are far too injured to go anywhere at the moment. Mei crossed her arms, a determined expression etching onto her features. And even if you could, the scraplets would likely eat you alive if you went to fix the fuel line yourselves. She stepped up and set her gaze onto Red Alert, balling her hand into a resolute fist. So where do I find it, and how do I fix it? The medic was taken by surprise initially, but slowly, a smile took over his features and he nodded to her. Listen closely. After a brief yet thorough explanation on how to fix the fuel line, Mei geared herself up with her best tools and a couple tag-along buddies before heading out into the base once more. She brought along Izuku and Ochako, mainly so that their heavier hitters could stay back to protect the Autobots and Tenya. She had considered bringing Kyoka as well, but she also had metal on her body thanks to her jacks, so she elected to remain behind. With light, tiptoeing footsteps, the trio walked through the river of scraplets going through the hall, following the fuel line to where they'd hopefully find the breach. Remember, we're okay, Mei assured. We're not metal. Honestly, I'm just creeped out by them in general at this point. Ochako whispered. Same. Izuku agreed before spying a certain blue liquid that was dripping heavily from where two pieces of the fuel line's pipework was connected. Wait, over there. I think that's the breach. Mei furrowed her brow and nodded. Right, let's get to it. We've gotta work fast. She lifted up a towel and handed it to Ochako. Rosy cheeks, you clean up that energon spill. Muscles, I'm gonna need you to keep that pipe steady while I repair the breach. Everybody got that? Yes, ma'am. The duo took to their tasks and went straight to work, with Ochako carefully taking the towel to soak up the spilled energon while Izuku reached down under the pipe and began pumping 5% of one for all through his arms, which sealed the connection well enough for the energon flow to stop. Gah, oh okay, I've got it. Izuku said through gritted teeth. Good, now keep it steady and keep your eyes away. May brought up a welding mask she was keeping on her hip and put it on over her head, bringing up her personal welder soon after. She got right to work, sealing up the connection along the bottom of the pipe slowly and carefully so as to not accidentally ignite the energon. Finally, after about 5 minutes, she was done, and she let out a satisfied sigh. Okay, I think we're all patched up. Great. Izuku breathed out, letting go of the pipe only for his arms to fall limply to his sides. My arms were getting tingly. But then, much to the trio's horror, the scraplets all stopped what they were doing and began making their nasty whirring sounds. And it wasn't long until they were all up in the air and flying toward the nearest vent. Ochako paled in realization. Oh god, they're getting ready to feed. Come on, let's go. May took up her toolbox and made a mad sprint back down the hall. We gotta tell Red to flip the switch. Back in the control room, the Autobots were still unable to move a muscle, effectively at the mercy of any scraplets that should come in. Of course, they still had Denki, Eijiro and Kyoka as a line of defense, but even then, the teens all seemed pretty exhausted themselves. Tenya meanwhile was lounging about next to them, his legs having been propped up on a chair after having been bandaged up. Strongarm craned her head down, a feeling of hopelessness beginning to take hold. So, if we get the ground bridge. Not, if, Strongarm. Tenya interrupted, his gaze locking onto her own. But, when? How can you be so sure of that? Strongarm returned, the cadet showing signs of worry on her face. What if the others can't fix the breach in time, or? They will, trust me. Tenya smiled. Hatsume is quite the ingenuine person. She'd probably be able to make something useful out of scrap metal if given the chance. Trust me, she, Midoriya and Uraraka will get this done. Kyoka came over and nodded up to the bots. Yeah, come on guys, don't be so quick to give up hope. We'll make it through this, I promise. RC sighed, but smiled nonetheless. By Primus, you kids certainly are optimistic. I admire that about you. Okay, so when we get the ground bridge online, Strongarm continued, directing her sights toward Red Alert. Do we send the scraplets out, or bring our bots in? Red Alert immediately shook his head. No, Optimus and Windblade would be fresh meat. If we bring them in first, the scraplets won't have any reason to leave. If we want to lead them out of this place for good, we'll need bait. Pardon my Earth language, but where the hell are we gone? Get bait. Jazz exclaimed, throwing his hand up to the room around them. The little glitches have already helped themselves to everything in here. Crash. Everyone went silent as a loud clattering noise echoed through the room, culminating in a vent cover coming down and slamming against the floor. The group's heads all snapped up, and they saw the full swarm of scraplets hovering overhead. The tiny creatures were flying around like they were one massive being, like a serpent of some sort coiling through the air around and around the whole room. It was mesmerizing and quite terrifying. Eijiro and Denki grouped up around Kyoka, the three of them taking defensive stances. If anyone has any ideas on that bait, I'd definitely be open for suggestions. The redhead said as he hardened his arms up again. Red Alert. Everyone snapped their heads over to the nearby entryway and saw Izuku, May and Ochako come running back in, the greenette calling out, all systems go. Fire it up. Using whatever strength he could muster, Red Alert shakily got up to his feet and reached for the ground bridge's activation lever. Ground bridge, activated. As he pushed the lever down, his weak legs gave out from underneath him and he fell forward, collapsing directly next to the control panel as the ground bridge sprang back to life once again. And now, the bait issue. Jazz grit his teeth as he glanced back and forth between the ground bridge and the scraplet swarm, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. HMPH, bait, huh. Using whatever strength he had left, the lieutenant got up to his feet and went straight to the front of the ground bridge, waving his arm back and forth high in the air. Jazz. Kyoka exclaimed. What are you? Yo, creepy crawlers. Ready for the main course. Jazz glared at the scraplets as they focused in on him, their mouths all whirring in anticipation. Come in, get it. He steadily began limping through the ground bridge portal, and without fail, the entire swarm of scraplets followed after him, even as he disappeared into the vortex. To say that Optimus and Windblade were freezing to death would be an understatement. Unfortunately, the alcove they had found wasn't that much in the way of helping them stay sheltered against the harsh environment, and instead, their position only made them more exposed thanks to the pseudo-wind tunnel the small space created. The two had become so weak that they couldn't sit upright, and it was there that they found themselves laying down in the snow, feeling the effects of the cold overtaking them. "Why, you know what the worst part of this is?" Windblade asked, craning her head up so she could see Prime's face. "After fighting cons all these eons, getting smacked down, shot at, blown up, this is how our lights go out. Windblade, this may not be the finish that we had planned," Optimus said in a gentle, somewhat accepting tone. "But, if this is indeed the end, if we are to become one with the Allspark." The city speaker reached her hand out and placed it on the back of Prime's, to which he moved it over so he could gently grasp hers. She smiled sadly up to him and nodded. "It's been an honor serving with you, Optimus Prime." But then, dejection overtook her features and her optics screwed themselves shut. "I just wish we could have said goodbye to the kids," she choked out. Beneath his faceplate, Optimus couldn't help but frown sadly himself. "I know." The Prime gently closed his optics, but then he heard something familiar. His sights went up in time to see a certain light appear in the distance, followed by a spiraling green vortex. And all at once, a feeling of hope began to reverberate through him. "Windblade, look." Windblade's optics snapped open and she saw the ground bridge, her voice cracking in joy as her smile came back. "Home. Come, up on your feet." Optimus's legs creaked as his joints began to move, with Windblade's doing the same. Within seconds, the two were up and they made a beeline for the portal, slowly but surely approaching it. Even then, however, they had a few trip-ups along the way. But then, what happened next took them aback. Just as the two were within 10 meters of the portal, Jazz came hobbling through, much to their confusion. "Prime, Windblade." Jazz waved his arm in a downward motion. "Down, now." With that, he fell forward right onto the ice, and from right behind him, something came bursting out of the portal. A huge swarm of scraplets, Optimus exclaimed, taking a defensive position. "What?" Windblade's optics widened in panic. "Frag, this is just what we needed." The scraplets spotted the two immediately and zeroed right in on them, their maws open and ready to munch. But, just as they were within a few feet of them, their systems and bodies began to freeze up instantly, the cold taking its intended effect. And before long, the scraplets came raining down onto Optimus and Windblade, all of them bouncing off as dead as doornails. As the snowstorm cleared and the clouds parted for the sun, needless to say, the duo were baffled by what just happened. But as Jazz brushed off the scraplets on his own body, he offered a victorious grin. "Hey, I'd invite y'all in, but the place is a mess. Man, I can't believe we missed everything." About half an hour had passed since the scraplets were disposed of, and currently, all of the Autobots were gathered in the main control room, sitting down or laid out on medical beds. Many of them were hooked up to machinery that helped them in their repairs, and all the while, the teens were actually the ones monitoring them. The only Autobots who weren't sitting were Bulkhead, Sideswipe and Sunstreaker, the three having just arrived with Momo and Mina in tow. "Yeah, I kinda gotta agree with Mina on this one." Sideswipe nodded. "Sucks that we had to miss out on all the action." From her bed, Strongarm narrowed her optics at him, lifting her arm to show him her wounds. "Sideswipe, does it look like you wanted to be here during this whole thing?" The red bot threw his head back and laughed. "HA. Please, I would have given those scraplets a run for their money and you know, ah." He gasped as he felt something crawl over his foot, only to realize that it was one of the dead scraplets. He saw Ajiro wearing a cheeky grin as he picked the carcass up, and there was a small chorus of chuckles throughout the room. "Hey, not funny." "Maybe not, but it's always good to be humbled," Ajiro called back. Sunstreaker put his hands behind his head with a big smile. "Hey, well I know I'm glad I wasn't here." He brushed his arm and saw his reflection in his paint job. "I just got myself buffed yesterday, so glad I avoided a total catastrophe." Almost immediately, he was met with narrowed eyes from everyone in the room, prompting him to shrug. "What?" Denki brought up a dead scraplet of his own, giving his friend a bit of stink eye as he manually hinged its jaws. "Remember that whole thing about being humbled, Sonny?" "Gah, okay, you've made your point." Sunstreaker raised his hands in surrender. Momo sighed and went over to Windblade, putting a hand over her cold, metal one. I'm just glad that everyone made it out in one piece, barely. Windblade smiled to her and gave a weak laugh. Huh, yeah, so am I. Mina went up to Ochako, who was currently hooking up a wire into Arcee's arm. So, what was it like? Did you guys take out a bunch of the little guys like in the Alien movies? Or I'm guessing that they must have been the ones hunting you guys down, right? Come on, I need the juicy details. After we take care of things here, Mina. Ochako denied, placing a finger on Mina's lips to silence her. We still have a ton of work to do to fix everyone up. Mina pouted behind her as she made her way over to Tenya, the boy laying out on a small couch with a blanket draped over his legs. So, how are you doing, class rep? Need anything? Not right now, Uraraka, thank you. Tenya reciprocated, his legs having been propped up on pillows with some ice packs on them. Hopefully within a few minutes I'll be able to walk without any stinging feeling. Bulkhead approached the teens working at the monitors, bending over to see what they were doing. You sure you guys don't need any help with that? I think I could. It's okay, Bulkhead, May said with a wave, not taking her eyes off the screen for a second. We've got this. She craned her head up to Red Alert and gave him a thumbs up. Biocircuitry levels are on the rise, Red Alert. Excellent. Red Alert nodded back before his attention went to the other teens. Izuku, keep a close eye on Bumblebee's electro-pulse monitor. Kyoka, check Jazz and Strongarm's interface patches. Izuku gave him a salute. Things are steady. And Kyoka gave him one of her own. Looking good, Doc Bot. Perhaps you should get some rest yourself, old friend. Optimus suggested, offering a smile to Red Alert. You've saved quite a few lives today. Red Alert paused at that, knowing full well that he couldn't take all the credit on that. It wasn't all my doing. He glanced over to the teens briefly, thanking his lucky stars that they had been there to help. We're just fortunate that this infestation happened, on a Sunday. Optimus nodded at that. Our human friends may be small, but they are stronger than they seem. I realize that now, yes. Red Alert took a moment to ponder over something before calling out, May, if I could have you for a moment. May raised a brow and went right over to him. Yeah, what is it, Red? As she approaching him, though, he reached out a closed hand and opened it slowly to her, revealing her half-eaten Sky Spy. An array of mixed emotions began bubbling up inside her, though for the most part, she was confused at this. What are you? May, I realize that I've been acting quite distant from you for this past week. Red Alert lowered his head. And for that, I apologize. I see now that you have a great passion for inventing things, and seeing your brilliant device having been eaten by those scraplets, well, it's made me realize that I should stop being so belligerent and actually start being a team player. He offered her a small grin. Perhaps I could help you rebuild this Sky Spy of yours. As my way of saying thank you for your assistance in repairing the ground bridge. A wide, happy smile overtook May's features, and she could feel a slight lump forming in her throat as she took up her Sky Spy in her hands. I'd really appreciate that, Red Alert. Thank you. Everyone's head snapped around at Mina's blood-curdling scream, and immediately, the teens reached for their makeshift weapons. Scraplet! Izuku exclaimed. Spider! Mina shouted before spinning around to see if it had crawled onto her. Is it on me? Get it off. Get it off. The Autobots and students watched as Mina ran off in full-on panic mode, Jazz shooting a perplexed look after her. Did she just scream like a little girl? Chapter 14, The Lone Wrecker. It was Tuesday, and believe it or not, the team were still partially reeling from their experience on Sunday. The scraplets had certainly left their marks on the base, in more ways than just one. Not only were there several bite marks strewn around the place, but the ground bridge was still not quite up to snuff. Oftentimes, whenever Red Alert would use it, it would spark and sputter without warning, which only served to aggravate the medic. Of course, he had promised May that he'd help her rebuild her Sky Spy, so to add all of the ground bridge issues on top of that, well, it was more than a little annoying. Thankfully, it wasn't all bad since Mina had passed her assignment, which the pink girl was very thankful for. Hey, I might have got an AB, but it's probably the highest freaking grade I've ever got. The acid user said with a proud smile. Momo couldn't help but facepalm when she heard that. Let's try to fix that, shall we? Before midterms and finals, if possible. After they had gotten out of school, the students spent their whole afternoon getting back to what they were used to. Training with the Autobots. Thankfully, Agent Fairborn had used her quirk on Tenya after the whole ordeal with the scraplets, so he was feeling back in tip-top shape, and that meant he was back to his usual self. Come now, everyone, he exclaimed while moving his arms in his usual stiff, choppy fashion. We have less than a week left until the sports festival and those scraplets threw us off our game. We must get back on the ball ASAP. For most, that came pretty easy, but for Izuku, he was effectively stuck. It had been hours since their training for the afternoon started, and at the moment, the inheritor of One for All was sitting on the couch inside the base with ice packs on his legs. Damn, I can't believe I still can't get a hang of this new way I've learned to use One for All. He grimaced as he sat up, deeming his legs well enough to move. I've been able to get it so that my bones don't break by only using 5%, so why do I still feel like I can't control it at all? Sure, I can still make air blasts with my fingers, mental note, think of a name for that move, but I still end up sore after using it. I can't keep doing the same thing and expect to get a different result. What good of a hero would I be if I end up sore after fighting crime? Man, I just wish I had an epiphany or someth. Jab. Eow. Izuku jumped out of his seat and came back down hard, rubbing his arm before seeing Kyoka standing right next to him. There, feel better. The perplet smiled. Kyoka. Izuku scooted back in surprise. How long have you been there? Long enough to hear your muttering. Kyoka wiggled her jacks and winked at him. You've been going for a solid 30 seconds, so I thought I'd snap you out of it. Izuku sighed and his shoulders drooped, feeling embarrassed as Kyoka sat next to him. I really need to keep my thoughts from coming out of my mouth. It's probably gonna come back to bite me someday. Kyoka chuckled and leaned back on the sofa. Well, maybe. But hey, at least you weren't talking about something truly embarrassing. She quirked a brow and smirked to the boy. Then I'd never let you live it down. Izuku groaned and Kyoka gave out a laugh, patting his back in reassurance. I'm kidding, I swear, mostly. But back on topic, still sounds like you're having a hard time with your quirk. Yeah, well, kinda. Izuku shrugged. I've got it mostly down, but it feels like I'm missing something to make it work completely. I've asked All Might and Optimus, but they aren't completely sure either. The punk rocker pursed her lips, tapping them in thought before an idea popped into her head. Well, maybe you just need a different perspective on things. An alternate point of view that could help y'all along. Okay, where would I get that? Kyoka stood up and offered him her hand, which he took and steadily got to his feet. Consider this, your quirk is having an effect on your body, right? Well, who better to go to than a doctor when it comes to your body? Wait, you think Red Alert could help me? Izuku asked, incredulous by the answer. Wouldn't hurt to give it a try. Kyoka encouraged as she led Izuku down a nearby hallway, going straight for Red Alert's med lab. Besides, humans and Cybertronians are both humanoid in shape. How different could our bodies be, really? Izuku couldn't help but deadpan at that. And not to be rude, but you do realize what you just said, right? The perplet abruptly stopped and her face scrunched up a bit, only now realizing what came out of her mouth. Okay, so I'll admit, I was kinda reaching there. But hey, you never know unless you try, right? A chuckle came from Izuku's throat. How is it that she's this cute when she isn't even trying to be? AAAUGH. Brain, focus. Now's not the time for that. Shaking away that thought, even if he didn't want to, Izuku nodded and nervously pointed down the hall. Why yeah, you're right. Hee, let's head to Red's lab and see if he's got any advice. See, now there's the spirit. Kyoka gave her best friend a thumbs up. And like that, the two were off toward Red Alert's lab, though when they got there, they came into contact with something they weren't expecting. Almost quite literally, as when the door opened for them, whoosh. Ah! The duo yelled in unison as something came flying by their heads, zooming around the room faster than they could even see. What the heck? Izuku's eyes snapped up and saw an orangish-yellow blur, one that was making some sort of strange noise as it zipped around. Someone stop it. May's voice sounded through the whole room, alerting the two to her and Red's presence. They were actively chasing the thing around the room themselves, though their attempts were, crash, unsuccessful. May ended up tripping and falling over a tool of some sort, knocking over a container of spare parts. Oops. May, be careful. Red Alert warned as he swiped his hand for the flying object, only getting nothing but air. There's delicate parts in this room and I don't want either you or them damaged. Sorry, Red. May apologized before noticing Izuku and Kyoka's presence. Muscles, Jackie. Please, lend us a hand. The Sky Spy is out of control. Kyoka whipped her head up again, keeping her eyes on the Sky Spy. Got it. Izuku, help me with this. The boy nodded and joined her as she kept her sights trained on the flying invention, her jacks raised in preparation and keeping an ear out on its sound. Finally, the Sky Spy changed course again and came rushing right back to the duo, which made Kyoka brace herself. Now, hold on to me and don't let go. Izuku was taken aback by the order, but he had no time to question it. He grasped Kyoka by the shoulders firmly and held her in place as she extended her jacks, wrapping them around the Sky Spy. He then sent 5% of one for all coursing into his legs to keep him grounded while the device flew right past them, though Kyoka was quick to pull it back with her jacks. Urk. Kyoka winced as the Sky Spy pulled on her earlobes, her hands moving up to pull back on the jacks with more force. Oh no you don't, Zippy. She tugged the jacks downward and sent the device to the floor. May, turn it off, now. Right. May moved right up and flipped a switch on the back of the Sky Spy, deactivating it and its thrusters. The three humans all sighed in relief and May sent a thankful smile up to the duo. Thanks you guys. We did not expect that to happen. She craned her head over to Red Alert, the tall bot peering down to all of them. Well Red, I guess we need to do a bit more tinkering with the energon flow. Red Alert nodded in agreement. Right, it would seem that too much power is being sent to the propulsion systems. He picked up the device and scanned it with his visor, which gave him a reading just a moment later. Perhaps diverting the power to the newer features could help substantiate that. Wait, you're using energon to power that now? Izuku asked. That's right. May gave a thumbs up. Red Alert told me that using energon would be much more efficient than just using the normal battery I had beforehand. Energon makes it so that the hover function doesn't drain the whole thing within half an hour. Plus it'll be a cinch to refuel once it's gone dry. The only problem is getting it so that the energon is evenly distributed through the whole thing. Red Alert said as he opened up the device, showing the new tubing that was pumping the energon throughout it. Too much energon in one area will cause it to overload and eventually short out the circuitry. In a small device such as this, the key is to make it so that the energon is powering an equal amount in each essential part. Makes sense. Kyoka hummed to herself, interested in how the whole thing worked. Yeah, actually it kinda does. Pretty neat, Green Bean, Izuku. She glanced to her left and her eyes widened at the sight of Izuku, just staring at the Sky Spy. His eyes were the size of peas and his lips were parted, almost as if he was in awe of the device while also lost in his own mind. Izu. That's it, Izuku suddenly shouted, taking everyone off guard as he reached for Kyoka's arm. Come on, we have to tell Optimus and All Might. Wait, tell Optimus and All Might wah. The perplet had no time to ask as Izuku pulled her back down the hall, trying to keep up with him while also no tripping over herself. Thanks for all your help, guys. Izuku called back while waving to Intelligent Duo. I won't forget this. May and Red Alert were left flabbergasted at what they just saw, the former scratching her head. You're welcome. Well, Optimus my friend, I feel like I must commend you. All Might said, smiling up to the Autobot leader. The rest of the Autobot team, along with the other teens, were all gathered up in the control room after having finished their daily training, resting up after a few rather intense sessions. All Might himself had only recently arrived, the symbol of peace, wanting to see the progress that was being made. You and your Autobots have definitely given these children a great experience in training them. I mean, just look at him. All Might waved his hand over to the 6-1A students, and they were all lying about, trying to recoup after their training. You don't usually get to see this level of exhaustion out of first years. Mina narrowed her eyes at the number 1 hero, all while perched on Bulkhead's shoulder. Gee, thanks Teach. Yeah, I just love when my bones feel like jelly. Denki muttered. Didn't Midnight request that you guys take it easy with the training from now on? RC crossed her arms, thinking back to her rather confrontational first meeting with the flirtatious UA teacher. I will admit, she did make a good point, the intelligence officer admitted. But I can assure you that we have made the necessary calculations to ensure that we aren't pushing you over the edge like we were before. I suppose these past couple of days have been a bit easier than last week. Momo agreed, though she was still holding her stomach as it gurgled in pain. But I still can't say that it's not difficult. That's the whole point, kiddo. Windblade grinned while gently patting Momo's back. You guys wanted the best training we could give you, so we're doing just that. There was an audible groan throughout the room, making the city speaker chuckle. Don't be so discouraged, kids. All Might said as he raised a finger. If anything, you should count yourselves lucky. If you keep this type of training up, then the training camp this summer should be a breeze for you. Just as he said that, everyone's attention went directly to him, the students in particular appearing to be quite stunned at the news. Did I say that out loud? Training camp. The students echoed one another as they all abruptly stood up at the news. All Might, sir, what exactly do you mean by training camp? The hero's smile became a bit nervous as he coughed into his hand, though thankfully no blood came out of it. What the heck? I already let it slip. He pointed directly to the kids, an air of seriousness in his usual smile. But don't go telling any of your other classmates about this, alright? Aizawa will have my head if he finds out about this. The students all nodded simultaneously, urging All Might that he had their word. Alright, UA's annual summer training camp happens at the end of every spring semester. It takes place over 1 week and allows students to strengthen their quirks exponentially in preparation for the trials ahead. And considering who runs the camp, let's just say that you're in for quite the test. Eijiro was quick to smile widely at that. Whoa, that sounds awesome. So who does run the camp? That, you'll have to find out on your own. All Might raised his hand. I can't give away too much, you know. But rest assured, your bodies will be brought to the breaking point there. So kinda like what we've been put through with Auto Boot Camp. Ochako guessed. Correct. Why do you think I said the camp could be a breeze for you? All Might placed his hands on his hips and offered one final piece of advice. But be warned, the heroes who run the camp may not be as forgiving as the Autobots, so make sure you strive to do your best. But before you worry about that, keep your goals set on the sports festival. Optimus nodded in approval. Sound advice, All Might. After all, the event is still less than a week away, so. Optimus. Suddenly, Izuku's voice cut through the entire base, bringing everyone's attention to him as he and Kyoko ran in. Or rather, Izuku ran in while pulling Kyoko alongside him, the girl only barely keeping up. All Might. I figured it. Clunk. Unfortunately, Izuku wasn't paying attention either, so he ended up tripping over a large pipe. He and Kyoko were sent stumbling to the ground, with Izuku letting out an oof as Kyoko fell on his back. The punk girl winced, groaning a bit as she directed her sights down to the boy below her. Could have told you that had happened, celery stick. Sorry. Izuku apologized. Kyoko grinned and ruffled his hair. No prob, just please, don't freak out on me like that again. Also, thanks for breaking my fall. A light blush appeared on Izuku's cheeks, keeping his gaze down sheepishly. No problem. Young Midoriya. Young Jiro. The duo's eyes were brought upward as All Might and Optimus came over to them, with the rest of the Autobots and their classmates moving closer as well. What in the world is going on here? Yeah, you came in here faster than a cyberbat out of a smelting pit. Sideswipe remarked. Oh, why yeah, right. Izuku was helped up by Kyoko as she got off of his back, and the greenette was finally calm enough to articulate his thoughts. All Might, Optimus, I think I might have finally figured out something related to how I'm using my work. Optimus' irises rose up and All Might did a double take, their attention squarely on their student. You don't say. Well, that is certainly fantastic news, young Midoriya. Indeed, it is. But what exactly did you figure out, Izuku? Optimus inquired. An excited smile overtook the young inheritor's features as he raised his hands. The answer was so simple that it might as well have been staring me in the face this whole past week. You know, the project that Hatsume's been working on all week. He motioned his hands to his chest to emphasize his point. Well, that's me. I'm the Sky Spy. And just like that, everyone around him seemed lost all at once. Optimus and All Might both tilted their heads in confusion as the other Autobots all wore bewildered expressions, glancing toward one another in an attempt to figure out what he meant. Even his classmates were befuddled by his strange words. "ZRKT, I don't get it," Bumblebee admitted. But you're not the Sky Spy," Bulkhead pointed out. "You're Izuku." Eijiro approached Izuku with a skeptical eye. "Bro, you feeling okay? 'Cause you're kinda talking crazy on us here." "Yeah, no offense, but I think your brain's been fried like the rest of us from training so hard," Denki added. "And I'm usually the only one who gets that." But Izuku waved his hands in denial. What? No, guys, I'm not crazy or delusional. I know I'm not really a machine, trust me. I'm just comparing myself to the Sky Spy. Oh, well then why didn't ya just say that in the first place? Sunstreaker asked. Bumblebee raised a finger straight into the air. ZRKT, I still don't get it. Izuku chuckled and pat Bumblebee's foot in assurance. It's okay, Bumblebee, I know it's a bit confusing. But trust me, I get it now. He raised his hands up and smiled, the pieces falling into place in his head. I understand what I've been missing with my quirk. Up until now, I've just been summoning my power when I need it, in the places I need it. Like flipping a switch, almost. But if I do that, my reaction time gets slower and my muscles still get hurt. Which means. The young man widened his stance, bending his knees and raising his fists as he started to concentrate. I shouldn't be turning the switch off. He continued as One for All began to flow up through his legs and through his entire body, from his torso to his arms and all the way up to his head. Veins of glowing red energy spread throughout his limbs and face, his power beginning to build up all throughout him. I just have to leave the power on the whole time. His voice strained, still trying to concentrate. Imagining the energy that was focused into one place, spread throughout my entire body. Like how energon flows through the Sky Spy. The students, Autobots and All Might all watched in stunned silence as they saw the red veins on Izuku's body suddenly disappear, replaced as sparks began to generate from his form. Before long, the sparks began full bolts of green energy, which began bouncing on and off Izuku's body. As this happened, however, Optimus couldn't help but smile in pride beneath his faceplate. Quite the unexpected way to visualize your power, young man, but no doubt, it's helped you in spades. Well done. Whoa, that's insane, Mina exclaimed, her eyes watching the energy bounce around Izuku's body. Where the heck is all this power coming from? It's incredible. Momo put a hand to her chin, fascinated by what she was seeing. I don't think I've ever seen a quirk be used like that in my life. Midoriya is just full of surprises, Tenya grinned in approval. Ochako's eyes brightened up and she pumped a fist into the air. Haha, alright. Way to go, Deku. Off to the side, Kyoka couldn't help but furrow her brow at that. Ever since Izuku had given Ochako permission to call him Deku, it was hard getting used to someone using that name in a non-hurtful fashion. And even then, a part of her was still bugged that she wasn't the only one who had a nickname for him anymore. Get a hold of yourself, Kyoka. She mentally slapped herself, realizing how stupid she was sounding. You're acting like a petty bitch. You don't have exclusive rights to nickname him. Kyoka shook her head before giving a supportive smile to Izuku. Yeah, not bad, broccoli boy. I think you've really put everything together here. Instead of responding, though, Izuku's voice continued to strain as he kept the power going, raising everyone's concern. Izuku. Jazz lowered his head down inquisitively. Can ya even move like that, man? I think so. Izuku muttered. Maybe. Well, I must say that this is all quite amazing, young Midoriya. All Might beamed, placing a hand on his student's shoulder. If this new form of yours truly is one that has gotten a hold of your quirk, then I think it's about time we do a little test run to see what it's capable of. The pro-hero's grin became eager as his eyes began to shimmer. Tell me, you think you can move around enough to face me in a little spar? Needless to say, the 1A students were caught completely by surprise by that statement, including Izuku. Me and you in a one-on-one spar. Are you serious? Of course. After all, I've been wanting to test your strength in a proper fight at some point when you learn to get a handle of your quirk. All Might widened his own stance and raised his fists. Of course, I wouldn't go at you full force. I doubt even at your current level, you'd be able to defeat me. But a simple spar would be no problem. So, what do you say? There was a slight apprehension forming in Izuku's stomach, but at the same time, his excitement levels were through the roof. Going against All Might in a spar was something he could have only dreamed about as a kid. A smile of his own came to Izuku's features and he nodded to his mentor. Alright, bring it on. Beep, 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 beep. Before any sort of spar could start, a loud alarm suddenly sounded off from the main control console, bringing everyone's attention to it. Ah geez, what now? RC asked as Jazz made his way over to the console and started typing in some commands. I really hope it isn't cons, because after the whole scraplet mess, the last thing we need right now is to deal with them. Well, you'll be happy to know it ain't cons, RC. Jazz noted before craning his head over to Optimus. But Prime, ya might wanna look at this. Optimus moved closer, peering at the screen as Jazz explained. We've picked up a signal on a restricted band. Seems like it's comin' from a starship inside this solar system. Can you get a fix on it, Jazz? Optimus asked. Hey, does a technocat bite? With a few more inputs, Jazz eventually managed to focus in on the signal, and when he read it on the screen, he could hardly believe his optics. It was an Autobot insignia, and it was headed towards Earth. Whoa, no way. That's an Autobot ID beacon. Prime, someone's got yo, message already. Izuku's head perked up in intrigue. Wait, message. What message? The one I sent out into space the day after our debacle with Shatter and Dropkick. Optimus explained. I sent it out on a secure, Autobot-only signal, in hopes that any other Autobot stragglers out in the galaxy would find it and come here to join us. That got everyone's interest piqued. Wait, so that means that not all of the Autobots were on the Ark? Denki scratched his head. Does that mean there's even more out there? Strongarm nodded down to him. That's right. There were several Autobots that left Cybertron, but weren't part of the Ark's exploration team. They left to go fight Decepticons elsewhere in the galaxy, namely on Cybertronian colony planets. Her brow furrowed as she focused back on the screen. However, there are cases where Decepticons send out false distress beacons. Optimus, sir, I advise using heavy caution. Of course, Strongarm. Optimus agreed before activating the open channel. Unknown vessel, this is Autobot Outpost Omega-1. Identify yourself. There was a bit of static before a voice rang out, one that was undoubtedly male and had a rather sardonic tone to it. Sheesh, tell me how you really feel, huh? I've had warmer welcomes from Decepticon combat brigades. Immediately, Bulkhead's optics widened, stunned at who it was. He knew that brand of sarcasm anywhere. Springer. Bulkhead grinned as he lurched forward, almost causing Mina to fall off his shoulder as he closed in on the comm. Haha, you old con crusher. What are you doing all the way out here? MHA. Bulkhead. The bot, apparently named Springer, replied. By Trion's beard, is that really you? Hey, what's with all the security? The rock we're on is crawling with cons. Bulkhead explained. How soon can ya get here and even the odds? Sometime tomorrow, if I put metal to the pedal. Mina's eyes lit up, both excited and curious about Bulkhead's buddy. Oh man, another bot's coming here. That's so cool. Bulkhead gave her a nod, making his own excitement clear. Springer, Optimus pondered, finding the name familiar. I know of him by reputation only. He sent his gaze over to Bulkhead, hoping he could assure him that this was indeed his friend. Can you verify his voice print? He is 1000% the real deal, Optimus. Bulkhead guaranteed. Seeing the certainty in Bulkhead's optics, Optimus nodded to him and spoke back to Springer once more. We will send landing coordinates, Springer. Safe journey. See ya soon, buddy. Bulkhead added as Jazz went to sign off. I'll make sure you get a proper welcome. Hey, I look forward to it. Springer, out. And with that, the comlink was shut, allowing everyone to process just what was happening. Momo clapped her hands together happily. Well, this is certainly exciting, isn't it? Another Autobot arriving on Earth. Indeed, I didn't think we'd see any more until we found the Ark. Tenya furthered. Kyoka smirked up to Bulkhead, her arms crossed as she saw how thrilled he really was. Well, don't leave us hanging, Bulk, who's the boyfriend? That got a big laugh out of the Autobot bruiser. Ha ha. Springs and I go way back. We used to be part of the same war unit, the Wreckers. He smashed his fists together for emphasis. Which means the cons are gonna wish he'd never found us. And that made Mina all the more interested. Ooh, the Wreckers, huh? Sounds awesome. Tell me more. Yeah, me too. Eijiro jumped in, his toothy grin wide as he was eager to learn more. Sounds like something that's right up my alley. Hee, I'd be happy to tell you guys all about it, but I think it's best to wait for tomorrow when Springs actually gets here. Bulkhead recommended. Trust me, when he gets here, we'll be able to tell our wrecking stories in full detail, and then you'll get a good idea on what it means to be a wrecker. His optics shifted over to the nearby clock on the wall, noting the time. Besides, it's getting pretty late as is. All Might hummed in agreement. Yes, you make a good point there, Bulkhead. He craned his head down to his pupil with an apologetic smile. I'm truly sorry, young Midoriya, but I believe our little spar will have to wait until tomorrow. The quirk inheritor couldn't help but feel his shoulders slump slightly. Oh, why yeah, that's fine. I understand. But still, he smiled as he remembered, but hey, tomorrow we've got our hero training class, so maybe I'll get to use it then. Yes, we'll see. All Might raised a finger to his student in a show of support. But remember, some things may be best left a secret when it comes to the sports festival. Kyoka couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at that. Wait, seriously? Are you saying you don't want Izuku to take advantage of this new, whatever it is he's figured out until the festival? Seems kinda counterproductive if you ask me. But think about it, young Jiro. All Might pointed out. Any advantage you have would be kept close to the chest, wouldn't it? Plenty of other athletes do in with any other sport, after all. He waved a hand to the rest of the 1A students. Besides, everyone likes to keep certain techniques to themselves, and you, young Midoriya, have already shown a potential new advantage to 7 of your classmates. Perhaps you may want to keep that in mind for the rest of the students in your class, All Might makes a good argument, Midoriya. Tenya concurred. There are some techniques that not even I have shown to any of you, aside from Strongarm. Trust me, he's got some neat moves. Strongarm vouched. Izuku pondered over the advice and found himself quickly seeing what his friends and mentor were talking about. Why yeah, you guys make some good points. I'll be sure to keep this, whatever it is on the down low in school, at least for now. Well, I might not fully agree with it, but I guess I can see what you're all saying. Kyoka acknowledged before a small yawn came out of her, the perplexed stretching her arms up as the exhaustion of the day began to come over her. Well, in any case, I think it's about time we all cleared out. Ochako couldn't help but yawn a little herself. Yeah, we've got a big day tomorrow anyway. Bumblebee suddenly transformed and opened his doors up, inviting the kids to climb in. ZRKT, well don't just sit there and stare, ZRKT, let's whisk you off to Slumberland. Before long, all of the students, including May, had gathered up and gotten into their respective rides to go home. Once RC, Bulkhead and Bumblebee left and the other Autobots had dispersed, Optimus set his sights down to All Might inquisitively. So, I feel I must ask, has he made significant progress in your eyes? Far more than I thought he would make in this time. All Might replied, his smile bright and full of pride. Admittedly, I took to the quirk much faster than he had, but still, this is definitely a good pace. Now my only hope is that he'll be able to acclimate to this new ability well. I've never used one for all in such a way, so to see him do something completely unique with it, it's exciting to see. He craned his head up to Optimus one more time. And I have you to thank for helping his progress along, my friend. Think nothing of it. Optimus waved. I simply imparted my own wisdom onto the boy. He discovered this new form on his own. And I look forward to seeing him utilize it in the future. The Autobot commander shifted his attention back to the command console, seeing the Autobot symbol moving closer and closer to Earth. Tomorrow will be quite the exhilarating day, that's for certain. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, a certain Decepticon Air Commander was not all too happy. Goo, I cannot fathom all of this, Swift. Starscream groaned as he skulked along the hallways of the dark side, with Swift walking much more casually behind him. The Decepticon officer was currently reading a data pad, encroached in the intergalactic news that it had to offer. All the while, Starscream just kept rambling, mostly to himself. We've been on this planet for over a decacycle now and we've yet to really best those Autobot pests. A chuckle was elicited from Swift's vocal processor. Hey, you sure you're not just getting annoyed by the locals again? No, Starscream denied with a huff. Well, okay, maybe a little bit. How is it that we found the motherlode of Energon in most polite nation on this planet? These fleshbag Canadians, with their well-mannered dispositions and strange accents make me ill. He balled his hand into a fist, which shook violently. Ooh, it just makes me want to annihilate those Autobots and their human pets even more. Yeah, I'd say that they're more allies than pets at this point, considering one of them blasted you into a boulder by using nothing but a single air punch. Swift smirked, earning a grumble out of her commanding officer. Oh, or how about the one that managed to cut off your arm with his entire body? Now that was. Silence. Starscream swiped through the holographic datapad, making it dissipate and earning her full attention. Hey, I was reading that. Swift brought the datapad back up, earning an eye roll from Starscream. Oh please, what could you possibly be reading that's more important than this? The green femme raised an eyelid and presented the pad to him. Try reading some news around the galaxy. Starscream narrowed his optics at the pad as she explained. There are literally dozens of other Decepticon brigades that are having luck taking out Autobot outposts across the cosmos. PSH, please. Starscream scoffed. As if I need to keep tabs on the progress that, he searched through the article before pulling out two random names. That Thundertron and Cannonball are doing. Those lowly space pirates are nothing compared to our high standards in the Decepticon ranks. Swift pointed back to the article, deadpanning at her supposed leader. The sacking and pillaging of an entire Autobot colony they pulled off with the Seekins is hardly something to just sneeze at. If they can do that, surely we can take out just 10 Autobots no problem. Of course, we can. Starscream asserted. We just need the right opportunity to, BWAM. 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 A loud alarm suddenly started blaring through the entire ship, annoying Starscream even more. Oh, what now? Hey, Screamer. Unicronus' voice suddenly rang through the ship's speaker system. You need to come to the bridge ASAP. We've picked something up from deep space that you're gonna wanna hear. With a disgruntled groan, Starscream made for the bridge with Swift hot on his trail, the duo arriving to see Unicronus standing near one of the consoles. Well, General, we're here. Starscream said expectantly. What have you to report? I've intercepted a signal from this solar system, Autobot in origin. Unicronus explained, turning so his blood-red visor bore into them. It was on a restricted band, so I was able to home in on it. Ooh, intriguing. Starscream smirked. Were you able to locate their base through this? The general shook his head. Nope, that's still a no-go. The damn thing is too heavily shielded, even to find through something like this. But I have been able to isolate the conversation that the Autobots had with the bot who sent the signal. A malicious grin came to Unicronus' face. And trust me, you'll wanna hear it. Unicronus pressed a button and let the conversation play. Springer. Haha, you old con crusher. What are you doing all the way out here? MHA. Bulkhead. By Trion's beard, is that really you? Hey, what's with all the security? The rock we're on is crawling with cons. How soon can ya get here and even the odds? Sometime tomorrow, if I put metal to the pedal. I'll see you soon, buddy. I'll make sure you get a proper welcome. Unicronus cut the conversation there, his optics meeting Starscream's knowingly. I know you and I don't usually meet on the same page, but you thinkin' what I'm thinkin'. Starscream's lips curled into a nefarious grin as well, bringing his hands together as his fingertips drummed on one another. Oh, I think I am. But we haven't much time. He turned to a dark corner of the room and called out into the shadows, Makeshift, I know you're here. It's time to play our hand. From the darkness, Makeshift's bright yellow optics opened and he stepped forward, bowing his head to the two commanding officers. HM, how may I be of service, Commander Starscream? The Seeker's smirk increased while Unicronus raised his arm, his hand glowing purple as he began sending tech specs into Makeshift's mind. Before long, the shadowy Khan's optics changed from yellow to purple as his spiky body began to change shape altogether, until it became a completely different form entirely. I believe it's time we execute our own proper welcome. Before the team knew it, it was Wednesday afternoon, and as far as they knew, Springer was still scheduled to arrive that very day. After school had come and gone, the teens wasted very little time in getting into RC and Bumblebee and making their way toward the Autobot base, with the yellow bot in particular relieved that there was no sign of Midnight anywhere. If the R-rated heroine had spotted them, he probably would have been stuck for a while. You really get nervous around Miss Midnight, don't ya, B? Ochako noted, the brunette having hitched a ride in the Volkswagen for a change. ZRKT, ya think? Bumblebee's holoform circled his finger next to his head while crossing his eyes. ZRKT, that woman is, ZRKT, cuckoo. Cuckoo. However, Tenya simply waved his hand. Oh, come now, B. Miss Midnight is simply, much more flirtatious than your average person. With a roll of her eyes, Kyoka shook her head. Gee, stellar observation there, Iida. She reached up and pat Bumblebee's shoulder to comfort him. Don't worry about it, B. Sure, it's a bit weird, but Midnight doesn't mean any harm by it. I mean, it's not like that something bad will happen if she keeps it up. You just gotta let her down easy, preferably without telling her you're a giant robot from outer space. ZRKT, wow, thanks, ZRTK, I feel so much better. Bumblebee deadpanned, making everyone laugh as they approached the base. After their arrival, about an hour went by without much happening. Apparently, Springer's ship was still a short ways away from the planet, so they were forced to pass the time by training and other activities, all while Bulkhead paced about the whole base. It was clear that the rotund Autobot was antsy, and his human partner was quick to call him out on it. Bulk, I don't think I've ever seen you this stoked. Mina beamed. Oh, you'd better believe it, Mina. Bulkhead affirmed. Trust me, you're gonna love Springer. We were like brothers. And tonight, he raised his fist into the air. We're gonna party. Her excitement levels now thoroughly through the roof, Mina clasped her hands together and bounced in place. Haha, awesome, I can't wait. But, right at that moment, their next arrival made his appearance with a loud, thwoom. At the front entrance, All Might stood tall with his signature grin and his hands on his hips. I am here to greet the newcomer. He announced loud and proud. A bit early with that one, All Might. Sideswipe remarked, gesturing to the others who were just standing around. Springer's not even here yet. A sheepish look overtook All Might's features as he rubbed the back of his head, slightly embarrassed by the ordeal. Oh, right, of course, hee. Either way, apologies if anyone was waiting on me. I got held back by Principal Nezu to attend a short meeting. That's quite alright, All Might, you're actually right on time. Optimus assured, waving a hand toward the main console. It showed the Autobot signal closing in on planet Earth at ever-increasing speeds, which could only mean one thing: Springer is nearly here, so I suggest that everyone be on standby for his arrival. Red alert. The medic gave Optimus a salute as he pressed a few buttons on the ground bridge terminal. Ground bridge is cycling up, zeeked. Gah. Red alert took a step back as some sparks spat out of the control module, all while letting out a frustrated grumble. Blasted scraplets. The equipment hasn't been the same since the infestation. Next to him, May's lips turned up into a sneer. I hate those little bugs. Even when they're gone, they still find ways to make me mad. So, let me get this straight, Prime. Eijiro spoke up, garnering Optimus' attention. We're having Springer land halfway across the world and then bridging him here. Optimus nodded down to him. Yes, Eijiro, as a precautionary step. We can't risk revealing the location of our base, just in case the Decepticons are tracking Springer's ship. With a small shrug, the spiky redhead placed his hands behind his head. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, he trailed off as another topic came to mind. Hey, Bulkhead, so what exactly is this whole wrecker business anyway? Hey yeah, I haven't been able to stop thinking about that since last night. Mina jumped in as well, grinning up to her partner. Come on, Bulk, quit holding out on us. Hee, okay, I might as well give you the gist. Bulkhead relented as he finally sat down, taking a seat on the ground bridge platform as the students all gathered up to hear what he had to say. So, here's the basics of the Wreckers. We were some of the best that Cybertron had to offer in terms of combat prowess and plain old grit. We took on the jobs that no ordinary Autobot was capable of doing, and we did them with a pretty rough and tumble mindset. Oh my, sounds rather dangerous. Momo noticed. Bulkhead sighed and leaned forward a bit. You don't know the half of it. A lot of us weren't afraid to put our lives on the line to accomplish the kind of jobs we were saddled with, though. He became slightly crestfallen at that part. Sure enough, I've lost plenty of friends over the years of being a wrecker. Pyro, Guzzle, Iron Fist, Leadfoot, and many more. It's actually part of the reason why I left the Wreckers to join Optimus' main crew. I was getting tired of seeing my friends die. The students also became slightly downcast after hearing that. Whoa, can't imagine how hard that must have been for ya, Bulk. Denki empathized. Yeah, being a wrecker can be exciting, but it's also a dangerous job. Bulkhead's saddened face became a smile as he stood up again. But hey, at least I know now that some of my old pals may still be out there somewhere, so. BWAM. 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 Right at that moment, the base's sensors began to go off as the team's attention was drawn toward the control console, as well as the screen. Much to their shock, several Decepticon signals had appeared directly behind Springer's, and they were closing in fast. Bogies. Windblade clenched her fist. And they're zeroing in right on Springer. Con scum. Bulkhead belted out. Come on, we gotta get moving. Across the planet in the Sierra Nevada desert, said Decepticon bogies had managed to catch up with Springer's ship, the green and yellow spacecraft growing ever closer to the ground. The cons opened fire on the ship, which began bobbing and weaving out of the way, only for a stray shot to hit it in its rear. The ship went careening off course immediately, and nosedived straight toward the ground, where it exploded in a brilliant display. The Viacons all transformed and landed, their weapons at the ready in case the Autobot inside survived. Things were still for a moment, before several energy blasts came firing out at them, even hitting one directly in the head and taking it offline. From out of the twisted, burning wreckage stepped a tall Autobot with mostly lime green color scheme and a rather angular build, his barrel-chested physique giving him a dynamic look. Said chest was flat, and it angled off toward his midsection, while his shoulders were sloped near the front to look like wedges. These angles on his shoulders and abdomen were painted yellow, which was also true for the thrusters he had near the small of his back. The rest of his back was actually a darker green, same for the armor plating on his forearms and the belt he had on his waist. His lower legs below his knees meanwhile, were actually a bluish-gray color, which was the same for the wheels that were on his legs and inside his shoulders. Also, his chest, legs, shoulders, and even his back were practically covered in paint chipping and battle damage as well, no doubt souvenirs from the battles he had been in. His shoulders, however, also housed two oddly shaped things clamped onto the tires as well. They appeared to be discs, or even pods of some sort, though what they were for wasn't exactly clear. The one on his left shoulder was indigo with white detailing in its center while the right one was red with black detailing, meaning they stood out from him as plain as day. The bot's helm was actually a somewhat odd shape, with a dual-crested silhouette with an additional single crest at the top of his head. It was mostly lime green aside from the air intakes near his jawline, which were dark green while the vents themselves were also yellow. The metal of his face was a pale green and he wore a cocky smirk. "If you're trying to ruin my day," Springer said with narrowed eyes, "you're gonna have to try harder." The Wrecker raised his plasma blaster and started shooting at the Decepticons again, though his enemies were quick to fire upon him as well. In a split second, he began running around his enemies, drawing their attention away from the wreckage before stopping to pump his legs. And then, sprung. With a leap that left the Viacons astonished, Springer jumped right overhead and then landed right in the middle of them, where he started going hand to hand. Gia. Ha. With a swift punch and kick, He quickly sent 2 Viacons packing, and in a blink and you'll miss it moment, he grabbed one of the Khan's arms and then chopped it off at the shoulder with his bare hands. He used it like a club to get the other ones away from him, and at that point, the Viacons were fairly sure they had sprung oil leaks. "Hey, you cons have gone soft on me." Springer reached behind his shoulders and pulled out a pair of twin, dual-edged blades, closing in on the Viacons to finish the job. But, little did he know that there was a shadowy figure watching the whole thing, and he was ready to strike. "Come on, Red." Bulkhead hastened, eager to get to the battle as he, Jazz and Windblade waited on the ground bridge platform. "We're missing all the action." After making a few adjustments, Red Alert finally managed to get the ground bridge open, giving the group a nod. "I'll get the sickbay ready." "HA. Who for? The cons?" Bulkhead guffawed. "This is Springer we're talking about." With that, he and his compatriots ran through the vortex, emerging on the other side only to be greeted with the hot desert air, along with the smoke wafting up from the twisted, burning remains of Springer's ship. For a moment, Bulkhead feared the worst, but those fears were quickly quenched the moment he heard fighting going on. Sure enough, not too far away, the big Autobot saw his best friend fighting off the last of the Viacons, stabbing his twin swords through its gut with swift efficiency. Jazz gave an impressed whistle as he saw the con fall to the ground. "Show. Nice moves. Hee, I taught him that." Bulkhead chuckled. Springer perked his head up and looked back, seeing the Autobots all gathered and waiting for him. His optics focused onto Bulkhead and sent him a knowing grin while sheathing his swords. "Ever think I might need a hand?" "Huh, what? And spoil the show?" Bulkhead retorted. Windblade placed a hand on her hip and pointed to Springer's left. "You missed one, hot shot." Without even sparing a glance, Springer lifted his left arm and brought his plasma blaster out in his right hand, literally shooting from the hip as the Viacon got up, only to have a new hole through its chest a second later. Windblade blinked before grinning in amusement. "Hey, never mind then." Springer came to a stop in front of them, shifting his optics from one bot to the other. "If this is all ya got, then the planet's in worse trouble than I thought," he remarked. And it was at that point that Bulkhead stopped holding back. With a burst of speed, he went right up to Springer and scooped him up in a big bear hug. "Ha ha, Springs." Jazz and Windblade couldn't help but smile at the sight, though it was obvious that Springer was feeling just a bit cramped. "Ha ha. Watch the finish, ya ol' wrecking ball. I'm already scuffed up as is." Before long, the 2 green bots separated and bumped fists. "Still, it's good to see ya, Bulk. Been way too long. So, you gonna introduce me to your teamies?" "Oh, right, of course." Bulkhead leaned him over and extended a hand to his other friends. "Springs, this is Jazz. He's Prime's right-hand bot." Jazz sent Springer a 2-fingered salute. "What's good, man?" Springer returned the gesture before Bulkhead went on, "And over there is Windblade, she's..." Whoa, hold on, I think I know this bot." Springer interrupted, stepping closer to Windblade with a knowing grin. "You're the famous city speaker, ain't ya?" "That'd be me, yes." Windblade nodded. "Huh, incredible." Springer extended his hand. "You were the talk of Cybertron for quite a while. It's a true honor." Windblade was pleasantly surprised, but she welcomed the handshake. "Oh, I see. Well, it's very nice to meet you as well. But hey, why don't we save formalities for back at base, huh? No telling when more cons might show." Bulkhead stepped up and gave Springer a hearty pat on the shoulder. "Yeah, Windblade's got a point. Besides, there's plenty of other people that I want ya to meet back at base." Just then, the ground bridge opened a few feet away, and Springer was quick to agree. "Hey, well, lead the way then." With that, the 4 Autobots ran into the vortex, and within seconds, they were back at base. Springer's irises rose up at the sight of the place, his optics scanning the environment around him in intrigue. "Huh, so this is the place you call home, huh? Doesn't seem like much." "Well, not in comparison to most Autobot strongholds," Bulkhead admitted. "But hey, at least it's cozier than some of the holes we had to hunker down in back in con territory on Cybertron, am I right?" "Hey, too true." Springer trailed off the moment he heard a chorus of oohs and ahs coming from his flank, and he turned around to see not just more Autobots but a bunch of organics as well. And they were all staring up at him. I guess this is the rest of your team, Bulk. The rotund Autobot came up and put an arm over his friend's shoulders. You're darn right. Everyone, meet Springer. Springs, this is the crew. One by one, Bulkhead introduced the younger set of Autobots, with all of them providing their own introductions as well before he finally got to the smaller creatures. And these guys are our human allies here on Earth. It's nice to meet you, Springer. Izuku said with a greeting smile. My name is Izuku Midoriya. He raised a hand up to his classmates. And these are my friends. Again, one at a time, everyone got a chance to introduce themselves to Springer, before finally, only Mina was left. And Springs, I want to personally introduce you to my other best buddy. Mina. Bulkhead thrust his hand down to the pink girl, as if he was formally presenting her to his friend. And believe me, she can wreck with the best of us. Mina couldn't help but smile at that as she waved up to Springer. Hiya. Springer knelt down and nodded to her. A pleasure. So tell me, he nudged his head over to his pal. You keepin' Bulkhead out of trouble? Hey, honestly, he's the one who's gotten me out of trouble. Mina shrugged. So you're the troublemaker in this scenario. Springer smirked before eyeing Bulkhead again. We're gonna get along just fine. However, at that moment, he heard a set of thunderous footsteps approaching from behind, and Springer craned his head up just in time to see the Autobot leader himself standing before him. Optimus Prime, it's a privilege. Beneath his faceplate, Optimus smiled and returned in kind. Likewise, soldier. What have you to report from your long journey? Been bouncin' from rock to rock. Springer said as he set his sights back to the Autobots. Searchin' for signs of friend or foe. And now, I find both. Prime nodded in understanding. We are few, but we are strong. We have suffered heavy setbacks, but through them, we have grown. He extended a hand to Springer. And we would relish welcoming a new member into our fold. Springer stared at the hand before chuckling a bit. I'd be honored. He shook Prime's hand, before then noticing the tall, muscular and blonde man standing next to Prime's foot. Whoa, hold up. Who's the beefy human? A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Springer. All Might waved. I am All Might, the symbol of peace and #1 hero in all of Japan. He raised his hand up to the wrecker as well. Please, allow me to formally welcome you to our planet. It's great to have you here. Please, the pleasure's all mine. Springer assured as he gently shook All Might's hand. Honestly, it feels great to just finally have a stable place to crash. And I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you. Then let's get this party started. Bulkhead exclaimed before slapping Springer across the shoulder again, the two bots laughing it up before they bumped chests. Oh joy, Red Alert murmured. Springer chuckled before stepping a short distance away from Bulkhead. Hee, well, a party definitely sounds awesome, but I think I can do ya one better, Bulk. Check out what I raided from a con outpost. He reached under the armor plating of his chest and pulled out something. From down on the ground, it looked like a small, glowing trinket, but within seconds, it expanded out into a large, energy cube that had several smaller cubes on each of its 8 corners. Springer tossed it up and began spinning it on his finger, much to the astonishment of the bots. Do I have your attention now? MHA. No way. Sideswipe beamed. It's cube. Ha. Springs, you've just made this party even better. Bulkhead shouted with pumped fists. The humans were only left more baffled by that statement. Well, yeah, we see it's a cube, but what exactly is it? Denki asked. Sunstreaker waved down to them and shook his head. No, it's literally called cube. And it's only the most popular sport on Cybertron. Judging by their expressions, the humans were surprised to say the least. Whoa, no fooling. Kyoka questioned further. I didn't think you guys had sports, honestly. Well, you never asked, now did ya? RC winked, leading Kyoka to roll her eyes. Ochako's eyes brightened up as she gazed curiously at the cube. Say, you don't think it's possible for humans to play cube? The Autobots eyed one another before Springer gave a shrug. Well, I don't see why not. The cube's lightweight enough to where you probably could lob it around, so I guess there's not much else to do but try. A resounding cheer went through the base before Red Alert spoke up. Before we get too ahead of ourselves here, I suggest you take that outside, maybe far toward the beach, he advised as he typed in a few commands on the ground bridge control panel. May and I will be performing some maintenance on the ground bridge for a while, and I would appreciate it if it didn't get wrecked in the process. Of course, red alert. We will get out of your wiring post-haste. Tenya raised his hands and began motioning toward the front entrance. You heard the bot, everyone. Let us proceed single file to the beach and see just what this cube game is all about. Everyone proceeded toward the exit, though Ochako and Kyoko were quick to take notice of Izuku, All Might, Prime and be moving off in a separate direction. Hey Deku. Aren't you gonna join us? Ochako asked. Sorry guys. Izuku apologized, his hand sheepishly rubbing his neck. I already dedicated myself to training my new ability with All Might, remember? I think I'm gonna be a while. Oh, yeah that's right. Kyoko recalled before going over and nudging his arm. Well, good luck, and I wanna see the end results once you're done, K Green Bean. Right, will do. Izuku nodded one last time before going off with his mentors and his partner, leaving the others to head over toward the beach. But, just before he himself walked out the door, Springer took note of the ground bridge, scanning over the impressive machine with his optics carefully. I gotta say, that's a rather impressive piece of machinery you've got there, Doc. The wrecker spoke up, earning him Red Alert's attention. You build it yourself. The medic was quick to deny that, however. No, I wish. Red began typing in more commands into the control panel, all while May handled some wiring nearby. In reality, this was left here for us eons ago by past Autobots who visited this planet. I see. Springer noted. So, if it needs maintenance, does that mean there's something wrong with it? Well, for the most part, it works. But unfortunately, it was recently damaged and I haven't liked the way it's been sounding as of late. Red Alert gestured to the ground bridge arch as he continued inputting commands. I've put it in shutdown for now while we work on it. Springer raised an eyelash. And if you need to use it? Red quickly shook his head. Not possible right now. I can't disrupt the process without causing irreparable damage. It'll take a few hours before we're able to use it again, give or take. I see. Springer nodded before starting back toward the beach, where no doubt everyone was waiting for him. Well, best of luck with your repairs, Doc. As he stepped away, however, Springer wore an insidious smirk. Things were going very well. Haha. See, what did I tell ya, Starscream? Swift laughed as she followed her commanding officer down the darkened hallway, the two going toward the prison cells. Said cells weren't used all that often, but now, they had a very special guest occupying one of them, and Swift was very pleased with that news. I knew you'd be able to execute a good plan when the right opportunity came up, ya know, eventually. Save me the sarcasm, Swift. Starscream waved off. The plan at the moment is only a partial success. Makeshift has successfully infiltrated the Autobot ranks, but we lost his signal the moment he stepped through their ground bridge. He clenched his fist in frustration. The Autobot base is no doubt heavily shielded to prevent us from locating it. But, no matter. The duo approached a certain prison cell being guarded by two Viacons, which they stopped in front of briefly as the doors slowly opened. I have complete faith in Makeshift. As the doors opened, their prisoner was on display for them to see. Hanging by powerful, heavy shackles from the ceiling, was Springer. The real Springer. The wrecker's head hung low as a groan escaped his vocal processor, no doubt only just coming back online. Swift smirked as she and Starscream approached him. Yep. Our inside bot is already in enemy territory. And he's wearing your look, Mr. War Hero. Tell Megatron that he's fragged in the head if he thinks Bulkhead won't sniff out an imposter. Springer shot back. Starscream gave a sinister chuckle as he moved in toward Springer. Oh, I would, but he isn't here right now. He smiled nefariously. If you couldn't tell, I led this sect of Decepticons. Megatron isn't even on Earth. Springer threw his head back and laughed. Well that explains a lot. Especially the stupid plan. Immediately, Starscream glowered at the wrecker before raising his null ray up at his face. Why you insolent little. Whoa, hold up there, boss. Swift reached up and yanked his arm down, shaking her head at him. Could we maybe not fly off the handle on our prisoners? He could still be useful. Starscream grit his metal teeth, wanting so badly to take out his anger on the Autobot, but in the end, he saw Swift's point. Yes, You are correct, Swift. The air commander leaned in, meeting Springer optic to optic. And worry not, Makeshift is good at keeping up appearances. He may only fool your friends long enough to open their ground bridge from within, so that we may finally learn the location of the Autobot base. Starscream waved his hand up and pointed to the ceiling. And from there, my strike team shall be sent in, to stain its floors with the spilt energon of Optimus Prime. Springer glared at the Seeker for a few more seconds before smiling knowingly. Well, good luck with that. The genuine tone he used got him the exact reaction he was looking for, Starscream trembling with rage and aggravation. Oh, you're good, Autobot. Starscream and Swift turned around to leave, but not before whispering to the Viacon guards, keep a close eye on him. He's a wrecker, which means he's very crafty. With that, the massive doors closed, leaving Springer locked up tight in his prison cell once again. He sighed heavily and shook his head. Jumped, shackled and chained, in other words, so far, so good. In reality, Springer had been in several situations like this before, so he knew how to get out of them pretty well, too. This time would be no different, and it also helped that he had a bit of extra assistance in this situation as well. He glanced toward the crimson and indigo disc-shaped pods on his shoulders, his lips moving up into a grin. That Decepti creep may have my face, but there's a couple things that shifters like him just can't replicate. Hope you're ready, because we're getting out of this dump. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 7 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.